Welcome to The Commute, a Bible study podcast designed to turn your commute into an opportunity to grow in your faith. Whether you're sure of what you believe or you're not sure what to believe, this podcast is designed to help you better understand who Jesus is, what the Bible's all about, and how that applies to your life today. I'm your host, Pastor Matt, and I'm excited to dive into this week's episode of The Commute. All right, well, hey, welcome to The Commute. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Pastor Casey.
And yes, we do call each other before we get dressed in the morning, if you're wondering why we're wearing these amazing matching polos.
It is just match day for the pastors, something we love to do. And, well, you all know that Pastor Matt wears it better, but I'm going to wear it anyway.
That is so not true, but I appreciate it. And, you know, last week, which as I say that last week, like the first thing that comes into my mind is like the recap on a show last week on The Commute.
You have a very good recap voice.
Thank you. You know, if this whole pastor gig doesn't work out, I think voice modeling maybe would be my next gig. Yeah.
It is a unique gift. Not everyone has that.
I'm pretty sure if I walked in there, they'd say, don't quit your day job. So I'll keep.
Please don't quit it.
Yeah. I'll keep pastoring.
Quit it.
But I think it's interesting. Last week we were talking about Isaiah, and we were talking about the big turn in Isaiah. And then, you know, Casey, you were sharing some of your other favorite images in Isaiah, and you came up to Isaiah 65, and you talked about that new heavens and new earth image. And you know what's so powerful about that is you read these words. So like, let me read the beginning of them here. It's Isaiah 65, starting at 17. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem to be a joy, and her people to be a gladness. And so God starts giving you this image of a new heavens and new earth, right? Well, now you jump to the book of Revelation, chapter 21, and it starts out, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. And I think it's really cool because you see this consistent promise of God, you know, kind of throughout. So in the Old Testament, you know, they don't really have this concept of who Jesus is going to be. They've got the concept, but they don't have the clarity that we have today. And yet each thing that God does has this tendency to build on the promises he's making, which I just think is a cool picture.
It most definitely is. And to consider that the promise of a new heaven and new earth shows up in multiple places, highlights, like you said, the consistency of God. And for those of us who have been reading through the scriptures as part of this reading plan, it should catch your special attention to say to yourself, wait a minute, this must be important. You know, if this is popping up more than once, there must be something to this. So as you're reading through Revelation, as you're digging into Isaiah, connect these two and see that there's something pretty big going on in the promises God is making.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is kind of the parallel. Remember, when we talk about Revelation, you know, we're talking about a people that are in the midst of suffering. Talk about the book of Isaiah, you're talking about a people, especially second half, that are in the midst of suffering in exile. And so there's something about suffering and trial that just brings about the promises of God in a whole new way. You know, just imagine you're reading these words And maybe you are. Maybe you're in the midst of your own trials, your own suffering, and you're reading these words. How powerful do words like this sound when you're in the midst of challenging times, when you're in the midst of deep uncertainty and wondering, what tomorrow is going to bring and if it's going to be good, because yesterday wasn't,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden God breaks, God breaks in with this beautiful promise that, there will come a day when he will once again full time be living and dwelling and walking among his people. And I love the image of every tear will be wiped away. That's what's so powerful about scripture and about, the Israel and kind of Hebrew culture it came out of, is it's just rich with image, and those images just stick with you. And I think what's being said here by John is that, there is no more pain, there is no more suffering, there is no more mourning. That wiping away anything that would make you cry has been eliminated from life.
Yeah, it really is an amazing final destination, to begin to imagine. Kind of where my mind was going as you were talking about the people of God in suffering and even in images. I'm going to sort of turn these words like into an image, kind of like it made me think of like, I remember being a kid and experiencing pain, what I thought was like terrible, crazy pain. In reality, I've just scraped my knee because I've fallen off my bike or something like that. But it's in those moments of pain that words like "it's going to be okay," "you're going to be okay," make a world of difference. Mom's holding me in her arms saying, "You're going to be okay. It's going to be just fine." And this, to me, these words from Revelation are like God in his embrace, picking his people up and saying, "Hey, it's going to be okay." And it's even better than just like a, "Hey, it's going to be fine. The pain is going to be gone." There's, as you said, there are images sort of hung onto this that you can then grasp onto and have a degree of certainty as to what this experience is actually going to be like. It's not just an end to whatever pain or suffering you're experiencing now. It's actually an experience of the totality of God's goodness and grace.
Yeah, I love that image that you share of like falling off your bike, and you scrape your knee and you're looking to your parents and they're like, "Hey, it's okay." Because I think it's like universal with small kids. It's like they'll take a tumble, they'll take a fall, and they'll almost like turn toward their parents as a way of saying, "How should I feel about this?" You know, and as a parent, you kind of have one of two choices. You try not to definitely overreact when they fall or they're experiencing something like that, because you don't want them to like freak out. You want to be like, "Well, hey, how do you feel about that?" Right? But it's kind of like spiritually, we do the same thing. We turn and we're looking at God going, "How should I feel about this? Like, how is this as bad as it looks?" And it's like God is taking that moment to look at us like the same way I'd look at my kids and go, "You're okay. You're going to be okay. This is not the end you think it is. It's only the beginning." And I think that's such a cool image that you share. Yeah. So
Yeah. And I think too, you can take it even further than like my image of just like you've fallen off your bike, you're in pain, and someone is just telling it's going to be okay for you. This promise is even bigger than just one individual. That this is new heavens and new earth. This is new everything. Uh, for a person who might be world, and wondering what direction is this ultimately headed. You flip on the news and you see things that scare you or that really perturb you, and you think, well, none of this can ever amount to good. Or I hear from people frequently that, oh, where we're headed, it is just not good. Things aren't the way they used to be. And now maybe that is is true. And I should just say that that is true. Things do not go very well very often in our world, economically, politically, even environmentally. There are a lot of things that don't go well, but we can look to God's promises and trust that it is going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And we can even say confidently, it is going to be okay.
Yeah. And I think it's cool that you bring that up, because I think as 21st century Americans, we have too much of a tendency to always make it an individualistic thing. Like, new heavens, new earth. Oh, good. I'm going to have a new life. No, what John is saying is that the world will be recreated, and all of a sudden we will get the opportunity to be one people, from multiple tribes, multiple nations, multiple tongues. What's kind of exciting, especially in the current climate that we're in, is the idea that I could sit across the aisle from somebody that does not look like me and truly, without having to take some intentional thought, see them as my brother or sister. Because in heaven, all those false distinctions of things like race and stuff like that just disappear, and we realize that we are, people created from the same creator, that we are redeemed by the same blood, and that we truly are one people and not, multiple different people, that we all have that same deep value to God. And I think when you meditate on images like that, it actually has the power to strengthen you in today. To realize that God has this desire for a new heaven and a new earth, and he has this desire for people to dwell with him, should change the way I view my neighbors in my neighborhood. All of a sudden, my neighbors in my neighborhood should be seen as people that have deep value to God, and that God would desire to become my eternal neighbors, getting to dwell in perfect and kind of sinless relationship with one another. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. And by the same token, this world is something that God is so interested in that he would recreate it. This life matters. This body matters. I've probably said this numerous times on this podcast, but kind of like if you've heard Casey talk once, you've heard him talk 1,000 times. So there I go saying it again. But I
think that's how we all feel sometimes, though. We all have our soapbox, Casey.
I'm so glad I'm in company on this one. But I say that because I think this conclusion to the story of God, as you've said, has lasting and transformational value for how we live today. This isn't just okay, this is coming in the future. Let me wait for it. Let me turn on my Netflix and just cozy up for a while until God decides it's time. This promise of a new heaven and a new earth is not your ticket to just be idle. Yes, you can relax in the promises that God has made to you, knowing that he has accomplished everything on your behalf. But at the same time, I think what these promises do, because they have, in a sense, relaxed us in our salvation, and we can dwell securely in salvation. Now we have the opportunity to be active in our life that continues here, and have the opportunity to, I guess, like rehearse eternity now, or like practice for what's coming in eternity. I'm starting not to make sense even in my own head.
So no, I think you're making, the image that kind of came to me was, and I think you put it well, like, how do we view the time between now and eternity? I think one, we need to view it that we're already living in eternity, like you're saying. But, I think a lot of times people take like a waiting room approach. like you're at the doctor's office and you just have to kind of sit in the waiting room until it's time to step into, shall we say, the thing that you're waiting for, versus taking an approach of just essentially like the kid at school. Like I remember when I sat at school and if I knew my mom was coming to pick me up for like an appointment or something like that, at school, you're not like, well, hey, my mom's coming, so I'm just going to sit here and do nothing till she gets here. No, you work until you hear that person call you over. At that point was a PA, and essentially say, hey, so-and-so's here to pick up Matthew, and it's time to go. And I think we should take that approach with heaven, not like we're sitting in a waiting room, not doing anything, waiting till God calls us in, but essentially, taking that school approach of I'm going to work until God calls me out over the PA. And so that's been some good stuff. Great conversation today. No, we had a few hiccups on the Wi-Fi, but I think we're doing good now. But is there anything you would add before we head out?
I think we've said probably the best stuff we can say, at least in the time that we've got. Obviously, there's a ton that we probably could say, but it's not coming to my head, at least not right now.
Well, it's always a joy to have these conversations with you. I'm so glad that you guys could connect with us today on The Commute. I want to encourage you, if you're looking for more resources to help you grow in your faith, you can jump on the Bethlehem Church Live mobile app, check them out there, or jump on Bethlehem Church Live on YouTube, click to subscribe, and you'll be able to do everything from our virtual worship services to some of the great content that we release to help you engage with Scripture. So till next week, it's been a joy hanging out with you right here on The Commute. Thanks for checking out this episode of The Commute. For more information on The Commute or to join the Commute Bible reading plan, simply download the Bethlehem Church Live mobile app or go to BethlehemChurchLive/The Commute.